Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty fascinating theological argument, one that challenges something we probably all assume. What if even our smallest, most innocent desires, the little things, actually have the power to cause profound spiritual damage?
So, the source we're looking at today digs into this really challenging concept called the night of sense. And the whole idea here is to get a grip on the kind of spiritual damage our appetites, or, what we'd probably just call our cravings or our endless wants, what they can actually do to us. And right off the bat, the text hits us with this really tough question. Could even our most minor wants, think about it, that extra scoop of ice cream, or just one more scroll through your social media feed, could those things have major, cascading consequences for our spiritual well-being? It's a heavy thought. All right, so let's really dive into this. To start, we've got to get a handle on the core concepts here. Okay, so the text proposes this solution, and it's called the night of sense. Now, this isn't some passive thing you just let happen. It's an active journey of what it calls mortification of the appetites. I know, that sounds super intense, right? But all it really means is consciously, actively reining in our desires. The whole goal is to purify the soul. So, according to this line of thinking, what's the fundamental problem? It's our appetites. Plain and simple. Our wants, our cravings, our desires, those are the things that pull us away from a state of grace. So, to really break this down for us, the author frames the whole explanation around two really critical questions. And these questions get right to the heart of how this damage actually works. So, the first question is all about the severity of our desires. Like, is it just the big, obvious sins we need to worry about? Or could it be that any appetite, no matter how small it seems, can cause real, significant spiritual harm? And that leads to the second question, which is all about the scope of the damage. Is it targeted, like a single arrow hitting one specific spot? Or is it more like a poison that, once it's in, just spreads through the whole system? All right, let's get into the answers and see how this whole argument builds. We'll start with the two different categories of harm that the author lays out for us. So the text makes this really clear distinction. On one hand, you've got privative evil. This is the big one, the ultimate loss of God's grace, and it's caused only by mortal sin. But then, on the other hand, there's something called positive evils. Now, here's a way to think about it. Privative evil is like having your bank account completely emptied, a total loss. Positive evils are more like a bunch of fraudulent charges that are actively draining your account. And the scary part? These charges can be caused by any appetite. And what's really fascinating is how the text breaks down these positive evils. I mean, they're not just some vague bad feelings. Nope. They are 5 specific forms of spiritual decay. We're talking about blindness in the mind, torment in the conscience, filth in the soul and body, weakness in virtue, and a real lukewarmness in the spirit. It's a whole list. So you might be asking, well, why don't we notice this happening? The text has a really powerful image for this. It says, satisfying an appetite is sweet to the mouth, but bitter in the stomach. You see, the good feeling is immediate, but the spiritual bitterness, that comes later. And by then, we don't even connect the damage back to that original desire. It's basically the spiritual equivalent of a sugar crash. Which, of course, brings us right back to that second big question. How can just one single desire cause all 5 of these different kinds of harm at the same time? How does that work? Well, the text answer is incredibly direct, like no messing around. It says it doesn't matter what the appetite is for. It could be for gluttony, it could be for vainglory. Any single one of them will produce the entire package of spiritual harm. All 5 things. And check this out. This table really illustrates the logic perfectly. Look at how an act of virtue, say purity, creates this ripple effect of positive stuff. It brings both comfort and peace. Well, it works the exact same way in reverse. Any inordinate appetite unleashes a whole cascade of negative consequences. So indulging sensuality doesn't just bring filth, it also brings torment. See, it's a total package deal. But hang on, this leads to a super important clarification. Because if you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, I feel desires all the time. Am I just constantly wrecking my own soul? Well, the text makes a really crucial distinction here. And here it is. This is the key. The harm only comes from what it calls voluntary appetites. That's when we consciously choose to give in. But And this is a huge but, when we feel an involuntary temptation and we actively resist it, that struggle, the fight itself, actually produces good.
In fact, the text argues that the struggle itself is where we build spiritual muscle. It's like going to the gym for your soul. It's a genuine opportunity for growth, not, and this is important, not a sign that you're failing.
So, the really crucial point here is that the presence of temptation isn't the problem. It actually provides the very context, the arena, if you will, where virtue can be forged and made stronger. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question to think about. What if the very struggles we try so hard to run away from, what if they are actually our greatest opportunities for growth? What strengths might be hidden in our own struggles, just waiting to be discovered?